Hey folks, it's Stephan here. Welcome to another episode of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game, Wrath of the Righteous. This week, the scenario is the Traitor's Lodge. The Dark Summoner Thurl abandoned his macabre laboratories to ghosts and spectral guardians. Among these warders was the ghostly minotaur Karsos, a one-time servitor of Baphomet. Now Karsos haunts these grisly halls, awaiting foolhardy adventurers with the patience of the dead. So the villain is Karsos, the henchmen are Galcor, Unfettered Eidolon, and Whites. During this scenario, when you defeat a non-villain Bane that has the undead trait, on your turn, choose a weapon, spell, armor, or item. Display a random card of that type from the box. You may shuffle that Bane into a random open location to put that boon under this card. Otherwise, banish that Bane and the chosen card. When the first location is closed, the character that closed it draws the loot Sacred Prism. The locations are the cemetery. All non-villain monsters gain the undead trait and are immune to mental and poison. The laboratory. When you would banish an item for its power, bury it instead. The manor house. When you encounter a boon of a type other than loot here, draw a random boon of that type from the box, encounter one and banish the other. The torture chamber. Combat or fire damage dealt to you is increased by 1d4. And the cell. Succeed at a strength or disable 7 check to move or be moved. Enora is going to begin at the laboratory, as she is the one best suited for closing that because she actually has craft. Imrijka is going to start at the cell. Shardra will be at the manor house. So it's Enora's explorer first. Oh, and she encounters an unfettered Eidolon, which is the henchman. Combat 11. If you have the summoner trait, add 1d8 to your check to defeat. Well, we don't have that. We're an Arcanist. If undefeated, the unfettered Eidolon deals 1d4 combat damage to any character that has the summoner trait, which none of us do. Banish the unfettered Eidolon from your hand to explore your location. That only counts if you are a summoner, and then if defeated, we may immediately attempt to close. He's not immune to anything, so we'll use Dazzle on him. For your combat check, discard this card to use your arcane skill plus 2d4. And we also have the Sage's Journal, so we'll make that 3d4. So that'll be a d12 and 3d4 to get an 11. And we get a 13, so we do defeat him. And succeed in Intelligence or Craft 5. Well, first let's recharge our Dazzle. It's Arcane 6, so d12 plus 1 to recharge. And we get a 7, so we do recharge that. And then we need an Intelligence or Craft 5. Her craft is a d12 plus 1. And I'm going to recharge the Researcher to add 1d6 to that. So it's going to be a d12 and a d6 plus 1. And we got a total of 9. So this location is now closed. On closing, draw a random item from the box. And it's a Demon Hunter's Handbook, which that might be a good thing. Recharge this card to add 1d4 plus the Bane's adventure deck number to your check against a Bane that has the cultist or demon trait. After playing this card, you may succeed in an intelligence or knowledge check with a difficulty of 5 plus twice the Bane's adventure deck number to reveal this card instead of recharging it. Well, that's one location closed on the first turn. Unfortunately, that was really the only location that had any spells in it, so now we don't have much in the way of being able to acquire spells. Well, that was Enora's turn. She'll reset her hand over to Imrijka, who is here at the cell. And she encounters a riding horse, Wisdom Survival 7. She has a d8 for Wisdom. And we get a 1, so we do not acquire the riding horse. She could explore again, but she's not going to. It's early in the game. We're just going to send play over to Shardra, who is here at the manor house. And now this effect comes into play. When you encounter a boon of a type other than loot here, draw a random boon of that type from the box, encounter one and banish the other. It's an armor, so we'll take another armor here. And it's a wooden shield versus magic padded armor. I guess I'd rather go for the magic padded armor. That's a d10 plus 2 for her. And we get a 1, so didn't acquire that. She needs to explore again, since she would have to discard something otherwise. So we'll use the Blessing of Ascension to explore again. And it's Rallying Cry. Check to defeat none. Each character draws from the box a random ally that lists diplomacy in its check to acquire and attempts to acquire it. If all characters succeed, this barrier is defeated. If any character fails, this barrier is undefeated. Banish all the allies, and you may banish this barrier. So we have to have a diplomacy trait. The retainer has a diplomacy trait, so that'll be for Enora. This has the diplomacy trait, so that's for Imrijka. And another retainer, so that's for Shardra. Charisma Diplomacy 4. That's a D8 for Enora. And she gets it. Imrijka's Demon Hunter is Melee Ranged 7 or Charisma Diplomacy 6. Well, the Melee Ranged is better for her. So that's a D10 plus 1. She's going to spend a blessing because it's pretty hard to get that. So now 2D10 plus 1. She got 7 on both of them, so actually she would have done it, but that's okay. She acquires. And over to Shardra, who has a Charisma Diplomacy 4. For her, that is only a D6. And since the other two have acquired, we want to make sure she acquires. So Blessing of Abraxas, that 2D6 to get a 4. And she still doesn't get 4. She gets a 3. So, in fact, nobody acquires anything, and that is unfortunate because we spent 2 blessings. And that is going to end her turn. Back to Enora, who now needs to move, since she's already closed that location. It's going to move over to the cemetery, and it's another henchman. Okay, Galcor. Combat 12 or Wisdom Divine 10. Galcor is immune to the mental and poison traits. If the check to defeat does not have the magic trait, he's undefeated. Well, it will, because it'll be a spell. When you roll a check... When you attempt a check to defeat Galcor, after you attempt the roll 1d6 on a 1 or 2, start the check over. The cards played on the previous check do not affect the new check. Well, we've got 2 spells that'll work equally well. We've got the Sage's Journal. I don't think he has either Cultist or Demon. We use Frigid Blast. For combat check, discard this card to use your Arcane or Divine skill plus 2d4. So we're going to have d10 plus 3d4, actually, because we have the Sage's Journal. And Imrijka is going to give us a blessing. So now it's going to be 2d12 plus 3d4 plus 1. Oh, and we definitely don't need a 1 on that, but that's okay, we still made it. So he's defeated, but now we have to roll a 1d6. On a 1 or 2, he's undefeated, basically. And we get a 3, thankfully, so he is defeated. And now, draw a card and bury a card. Well, let's first recharge this, so it's a d12 plus 1. To get a 6, and we don't recharge it. Closing cost is draw a card and bury a card. We drew the Codex. I guess I'm going to just bury the Demon Hunter's Handbook, which we just picked up. And no effect, so it's another location closed. Play goes to Imrijka, and she encounters Cambion. Combat 12. He is immune to electricity and poison. Before you act, succeed an Arcane or Divine 9, or you cannot play spells with the attack trait. We're not going to play spells anyway. Glaive plus 1, Strength of Melee, a skill plus 1d10 plus 1, so that's going to be 2d10 plus 1 to get a 12. 2d10 plus 1 to get a 12, so Shardra's going to give a blessing of Abbot Arsenal. Let's make that 3d10 plus 1 to get a 12. And we get a total of 17. So we do defeat Cambion. And Shardra can now roll a 1d6 to see if she goes again. And she gets a 1, so she does not get to explore again. To Shardra, is here at the Manor House still. And she encounters a Potion of Beast Skin. So we'll take another item from the box and see which one she's going to encounter. The Nectar of the Gods, Wisdom Divine 9, or the Potion of Beast Skin, Intelligence Craft 4. Display this card and choose a character at your location. While displayed, reduce combat damage dealt to that character by 2. At the end of the turn, banish this card. Or display this card next to a character at your location. While displayed, that character may add 1d6 to her checks. At the end of the turn, banish this card. Banish this card and choose a character at your location to get a mythic charge. So this actually sounds like the better of the 2, doesn't it? Now, as far as actually acquiring it goes, though, Wisdom Divine 9, so that's a d10 plus 3 for us. And there are no blessings. A d10 plus 3 to get a 9. And, of course, we don't get it. She could explore again with the Caravan Guard, but we're pretty early in the game. We already have 2 locations closed, so she's just going to reset her hand. Send play over to Enora, who now needs to move again. I think she'll come over to the Manor House. She encounters a Lance, which means we'll draw a random weapon from the box to see which one we do a check for. And it's a heavy crossbow. Dexterity ranged 7. Now I bet that would be good for Imrijka. Both of them would be very difficult to acquire. This one I guess is a little bit better because it's a 7. She has a d6 for both. Well, Imrijka cannot give her a blessing, but Shardra could give her a blessing. So rolling 2d6 to get a 7. And we get only a 6. Sorry, Imrijka. And that's the end of her turn. She resets. Play goes to Imrijka. She encounters a frog. Wisdom Survival 6. That's a d8 for her. And she gets a 4, so we don't get the frog. She's not going to explore again. Send play over to Shardra, who's still here at the Manor house. And she encounters a frilled lizard. We will draw a random ally. And it's a mastiff. Wisdom Survival 5 or Charisma Diplomacy 7. You may not play this card during an encounter. Display this card to draw 2 cards. At the end of your turn, discard this card. Discard this card to explore a location. Okay, so some pretty good effects there. Wisdom Survival 7. Discard this card to add 2d4 to your check against a Bane that has the Veteran trait. Discard this card to explore your location. Well, this one's the easier one to acquire. Wisdom Survival 5. Just going to be a d10 for her. And we do get the Mastiff. So she's going to use him to explore. And is a Book of the Lore Master, so we get a item. And it is Caltrop Bead. Banish this card to add 1d4 to your combat check. Banish this card to defeat a monster you encounter whose highest difficulty to defeat is 9 or lower. It does have the magic trait on it, interestingly enough. Intelligence Knowledge 5, which would be tough for her. Well, a dexterity check is even less likely, so send the Caltrop back. She'll roll the d6 to see if she gets a 5. She doesn't, it's a 3. She'll reset her hand now. And she picks up Cure, which is always good to have. Play goes to Enora. And it's a long spear, so we'll draw a random weapon. And it's heavy crossbow again. Dexterity range 7 versus strength melee 5. So she could use the Blessing of Baphomet. Discard this card to add 2 dice to any check attempted during your first exploration of a turn. So that would be 3d6 to get a 7. And we just made it. I picked up the heavy crossbow, so that'll be a good weapon for Imrijka, I guess. Play goes back to Imrijka, and she encounters Archer's Braces, dexterity range 7. That's a d8 for her. Or just a d8 to get a 7, and we do not. We get a 5. She'll pass play to Shardra, who now encounters an apprentice. We'll pull an ally. So it'll be Demon Hunter, melee range 7 or Charisma Diplomacy 6 versus Apprentice, Arcane Divine Charisma Diplomacy 8. Well, she's got the better chance to make the Divine check. So Demon Hunter will go back to the box, and we will roll a d10 plus 3 to see if we can pick up the Apprentice. And we do. So recharge this card to add 1d6 to your Arcane or Divine check. That's a pretty nice power to have. Discard this card to explore your location. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we will, because we're pretty close to closing this. And it's a white. So this is the henchman for this location. Combat 10 or Wisdom Divine 8. He is immune to the mental or poison traits. Before you act, he deals 1 cold damage to a random character at your location. When that character is dealt damage, she buries those cards instead of discarding them. Okay, well, so we'll roll a d6 and see if it's Enora or Shardra. It's going to be Shardra that takes the damage. And boy, there's really nothing she wants to ditch here. She'll bury Kolo. I don't think he's that useful anyway. So now she's facing white, which maybe is not great because she has Viper Strike, which he's immune to. And there are no blessings on the table. But she has she could do Wisdom Divine 8 instead. Okay. So that would be that's still only a d10 plus 3. Although she can use the Sage's Journal to give her another d4. A d10 and a d4 plus 3 to get 8. Plus 3 is 8. So we do succeed at that check. And the white goes away. Oh, and I forgot about this whole closing the first location. Enora would have picked up the Sacred Prism. And when closing, summon and acquire random ally. And it is a recruit, Charisma Diplomacy 3. So that's a d6 for her. And again, there are no blessings on the table, so it's just a d6. And she gets 6, so she does acquire him, and that closes this location, the Manor House. There's no effect when closing. Play goes back to Enora, who now needs to move again. She'll move over with Imrijka. And it's a carrion golem, combat 14. This is definitely one of the tougher monsters. You may not play spells that have the attack trait. Before you act, discard the top card of your deck. It's a spell, of course. If undefeated, discard the top 2 cards of your deck. Well, he's a combat 14, and we can't play spells that have the attack trait. Well, we've got this heavy crossbow, which we could just barely make a 14 with that. Imrijka's actually at the same location, so maybe she can help. That would be 46. That would actually be much better than the heavy crossbow. So, yeah. Alright, Imrijka can help. Recharge this card to give 1 weapon, armor, or item to another character. And she is going to give the javelin to Enora. So now, Enora will use the javelin for your combat check. Bear this card to use your dexterity range skill plus 2d6. You may additionally banish this card to add another 2d6. So if we do that, it's 5d6. So that's what we're going to do. Banish this weapon. Roll 5d6 now to get a 14. Of course, we got to have some 1s there, but that's alright. We still get a 20. So we do defeat the carrion golem. And now she has too many cards in her hand. Well, she could explore again with Chuffy. I guess she'll do that. She doesn't waste a card. And she encounters a mace. Strength melee 4. It's just a d6 for her. And she gets a 5, so she does acquire the mace. Now she again has too many cards. So she's just going to discard the mace to get down to 6 cards, and then we'll call that the end of her turn. Send play over to Imrijka now. And she encounters a wooden shield, Constitution Fortitude 4. That's a d6 for her. And she gets a 1, so she does not acquire that. She could explore, but she's going to reset her hand, I think. Play goes over to Shardra, who isn't that psyched about going to the torture chamber, but that's pretty much where she needs to go. So she'll move over to the torture chamber. Combat or fire damage dealt to you is increased by 1d4. And explore, and it's a temptation of lucre. Check to defeat none. Draw 3 items from the box. If the scenario's adventure deck number is 3 or higher, draw 3 non-basic items. You may choose 1 and add it to your hand. Banish any not chosen. If you added 1 to your hand, the barrier is undefeated. Each character discards a card from their deck. Otherwise, the barrier is defeated. After you act, banish this barrier. So basically, if you find a really good item, it might be worth doing that. And one of those is, oh, actually these aren't too bad, are they? Portable altar. Display this card. While displayed, add 1 to your divine checks. You may discard this card and add 1d6 to your divine checks, or to recharge a basic blessing instead of discarding it. At the end of your turn, discard this card. Monkey's Paw. You may use any skill in your check to acquire this item. Roll 1d20 to determine the difficulty of the check. If you fail to acquire this card and it has the corrupted trait, bury a card. Alright, that's just all about getting the thing in the first place. And this has the corrupted trait. Shuffle this card into your deck to add 1d20 to your check. The difficulty of the check is increased by 1d20. Well, that hardly sounds good. And the Blood Periapt. Discard this card to reduce damage dealt to you by 3. After playing this card, you may succeed at a Constitution or Fortitude 6 check to recharge this card instead of discarding it. Actually, it wouldn't be bad for her, since she has a high Constitution Fortitude check. But I don't think that's probably worth making the other guys discard a card, so she's not going to do that. She'll use the Recruit to explore again. And it is Stalking Armor, Constitution Fortitude 4. So d10 plus 2 for her. And she gets the 1. No armor for us. She's going to reset. Play goes to Enora, and she encounters Grizzled Mercenary, Charisma Diplomacy 6. That's a d8 for her, and I think the Codex will help. Discard this card to add 1 die to your check to acquire a boon, and then we can potentially recharge it with a knowledge check. So now it'll be 2d8 to get the Grizzled Mercenary, and we get a 1 and a 2, so great. We don't acquire him. Knowledge 10, Intelligence or Knowledge 10. So that's the d12 plus 3. So we get a 9. We don't recharge, so that gets discarded. She should have given the heavy crossbow to Imrijka at the beginning of her turn, but I forgot to do that. So anyway, we're over to Imrijka now. She'll explore. And it is the villain, Karsos. Check to defeat Combat 14 or Divine 11. He is immune to mental and poison. If the check to defeat does not have the magic trait, he is undefeated. Before you act, if this is your first exploration of the turn, Karsos deals 1d4 minus 1 combat damage to you. Well, it is the first exploration of the turn, so 1d4 minus 1. And actually that's 0. because we got a 1. That's a time when rolling a 1 helped. Okay, so we have to have the magic trait, which both of our weapons do have. Okay, so that's good. So combat 14, and we can get an extra benefit from him and from this. So we'll use the glaive +1. That's strength or melee plus 1d10 plus 1. We'll also recharge the caravan guard, who gives us a 1d4, and we will reveal the sage's journal, which gives us a 1d4 to defeat a henchman or villain. There is one blessing on the table, so Enora is going to spend that blessing to make this now 3d10 plus 2d4 plus 1. And we get a total of 31, well 32 actually. Wow, we definitely defeated him. Which means that this location is closed, and we don't have to do the closing cost. On closing, move to another location and end your turn. And this is the only location he can go to, so that's where he's going to go. So that's the end of her turn. She will reset her hand. Play goes to Shardra, who has Cure, and she probably should use it on Enora, or herself. Probably Enora. Reveal this card and choose a character at your location to shuffle 1d4 plus 1 random cards from their discard pile into their deck. We'll do that. And we get 5, so that's great. That's almost all the cards in her discard. We'll just pull 2 of these out and put the other 5 in her deck. And I realize now that I've been missing recharge possibility with the spells with her. Anyway, speaking of recharging, Shardra now needs to make a Divine 8 to recharge Cure. So a d10 plus 3 to get an 8. And we only get a 6, so we don't recharge Cure. And that'll be the end of her turn. Well, hold on, she didn't even explore yet. Oh, it's a white. Probably, that's not good. Combat 10, Wisdom Divine 8. He is immune to mental and poison traits. After you act, he deals before you act, he deals 1 cold damage to a random character at your location. When a character is dealt damage, bear those cards. So, gonna roll a d6 to see who takes the damage. And it's Shardra. So, might as well take it on Viper Strike, because that's not useful in this fight anyway. We're probably gonna want to go for the Wisdom Divine 8 check. We could use the wand of Paralyze to just evade, but I don't think that's that helpful. And we still have a Sage's Journal. So that would be a d10 plus a d4 plus 3 to get an 8. So starting in a 5 to get an 8. Of course we get 1s. Yeah, that's 4 plus 3 is only 7. Alright, so she doesn't defeat him, and she's going to have to take 1 more damage. Take the damage on the caravan guard, I guess. This guy goes back into the deck. She'll reset her hand. Play goes back to Enora, she does have 1 spell she can use, and it's got the fire trait, so it's a decent spell. And it's a bat. Wisdom Survival 6, just a d6. And we get a 1. She's going to use the Sacred Prism. Bury this card to add shuffle 1d4 cards from the discard pile of a character at your location into their deck. And she's going to choose Shardra. She didn't get the bat. Goes away. Does not have a way to explore, so she will draw up to 6 cards. And play goes to Imrijka, who's pretty well set for weapons right now. And she encounters a man-eating oryx. Check to defeat combat 11. If undefeated, each character attempts a dexterity or acrobatics 10 check. Characters who succeed are dealt 1 combat damage. Characters who fail are dealt 1d4 combat damage. So we definitely want to beat this thing. Alright, she is going to use her hand crossbow. For your combat check, reveal this card to use your dexterity or range skill plus 1d6. If you are proficient with weapons, you may additionally recharge another weapon that has the range trait to add 1d8. So we're going to do that with the corrosive dagger. And so now that would be a 1d10, 1d8, 1d6. But we're going to have Shardra spend a blessing to make it 2d10. So 2d10, a d8, and a d6. And we get a 15 plus 1 is 16, so that is defeated. Man-eating oryx is defeated, but she can roll a d6 now to see if she can explore again. And she does get to explore again. And it is Temptation of Arms. Check to defeat none. Draw 3 weapons from the box. If the scenario's adventure deck number is 3 or higher, draw 3 non-basic weapons instead. You may choose 1 and add it to your hand. Banish any not chosen. If you added 1 to your hand, the barrier is undefeated. A character at your location is dealt 1d4 plus 1 combat damage. Otherwise, the barrier is defeated. After you act, you may banish this barrier. Okay, so 3 weapons. It's kind of a hefty cost to keep the weapons, so. So javelin. It's some sort of magic weapon. Flaming heavy pick +1, which we did acquire in the last episode, and I decided it wasn't that worth trading something that she already had for. And a sigh. I mean, the javelin's good, but we've already got one. So no, I'm not going to take any of these, or just get banished, and we'll banish the barrier. Now she'll reset. Play goes over to Shardra, who really doesn't have anything too useful right now. I think she's going to drop these cards so that she can reset her hand and maybe pick up something that can help someone else. And, well, she got at least one thing that can help someone else. So that's her turn. Back to Enora. Enora still has a good spell, and she still actually has this heavy crossbow. And she encounters Corrupted Crusaders. Before you act, draw a random ally from the box and display it next to the scenario. Mendevian Crusader. Each character at your location summons and encounters the henchman Corrupted Soldier. The barrier is defeated or undefeated based solely on your encounter. If any Corrupted Soldiers were not defeated, banish the displayed ally, otherwise add it to your hand. Okay, Corrupted Soldier. He's a Combat 9 or Charisma Diplomacy 6. The difficulty of checks to defeat the Corrupted Soldier is increased by twice the scenario's adventure deck number. Well, that doesn't matter right now. If undefeated, the Corrupted Soldier does not deal damage as normal. Instead, it deals combat damage equal to 2 plus the scenario's adventure deck number. Anyway, he is a Combat 9 or Charisma Diplomacy 6. I think we're going to use this heavy crossbow. For your combat check, reveal this card to use your Dexterity or Range skill plus 1d10. So that's a d6 and a d10. And then we're going to use a d4 from the Sage's Journal because he is a henchman. So d10, d6, d4. And we get 16. So Enora defeats him, and that means that this is defeated. And we just have to resolve it for Imrijka and Shardra. Imrijka will use the glaive +1, so that's going to be 2d10 plus 1 to get a 9. And she gets a 10. Of course, we had to have a 1 in there, but that's alright. She still defeats him. And now Shardra. Basically, what she's going to do is evade. And evade means that they were neither defeated or undefeated. So I think it's still okay. Okay. Since I'm not really sure about the evasion and how that's going to affect this, I'm going to say that she will use her strength melee, which is the d6. She's going to spend a blessing to make that 2d6. He's a henchman, so she'll use the Sage's Journal. And she's going to use the recruit to add 1 to any combat check by a character at your location. So now rolling 2d6, a d4, plus 1. That was only a 7. That was only a 7, so that was not good. But then she has the power. When a character at your location would fail a check to defeat a Bane, you may recharge a spell to allow that character to re-roll the check. So she will recharge this spell. And now we'll roll it again. 2d6 and a d4 plus 1. And this time we got it. So he is defeated, and put him back over here. The ally now goes into Enora's hand. Okay. Discard this card to explore your location during this exploration. Add 1 to your combat checks. So she'll do that. And it is the white. Combat 10 or Wisdom Divine 8. He's immune to mental and poison. Before you act, he deals 1 cold damage to a random character. So d6 to see who that is. And it ends up being Shardra. Poor Shardra. He's taking a beating over here. Yeah, pretty close to being dead. Okay. Oh yes, you're supposed to bury that card instead of discarding it. So we're going to use Fiery Glare. It'll be our Arcane Divine plus 2d4 plus 4. We're also going to use Sage's Journal, so that'll be a 3d4. So d12 plus 3d4 plus 1. Unfortunately, nobody has any blessings, so that's it. d12 plus 3d4 plus 1. It's a 10. What do we need? We needed a 10. Gosh. So he's defeated. We know the villains here, though. Each character is dealt 1 mental damage that may not be reduced. We don't actually have to do it. We could make the closing check if we wanted to, but we still have enough blessings in the box. So rather than take that 1 mental damage to everybody, we're just not going to close it. So she's going to go back and try to recharge this. That is an Arcane or Divine 10. So she'll recharge this to add 1d6 to her check. So it's a d12 plus a d6 plus 1 to get a 10. And we only get a 8. So don't recharge that. That's unfortunate, but she played a spell, so she would get a spell back anyway. And then she'll draw up to 6 cards. Play goes to Imrijka. Let's see, I think he's undead, he's not a demon, so I don't know that that's going to help really. So she'll just explore. And she would have found a demon anyway. Pitborn Scoundrel, Combat 12. If the check to defeat has cold, electricity, or fire trait, the difficulty is increased by 3. Before you act, if you are the only character at your location, he deals 1d4 minus 1 combat damage to you. Well, we're not the only one. When you act, damage dealt by Pitborn Scoundrel may not be reduced. We're going to use the glaive plus 1, and Enora is going to give us a blessing. So it will be 3d10 plus 1. Well, that's not cool. Yeah, we got a 5. So that's the whole hand gone. So we couldn't reduce the damage. And that's what the effect of armor is. Banish this card to reduce all damage dealt to 0. The whole hand gone. This guy goes back into the deck. And Imrijka will reset. Guess all the blessings in her deck are at the bottom. Play goes to Shardra, who is not going to act because she only has 1 card in her hand. So she's going to just reset. Get ready to have a fight here. Alright, she only has 1 card left in her deck. Imrijka has 2 left. Enora actually has 9, so she's better off than the others. It's her turn. There's 4 cards here. 1 is a villain. 1 is that demon. Okay, it's the villain that we encounter. Karsos. Check to defeat combat 14 or divine 11. He's immune to mental and poison. If the check to defeat does not have the magic trait, he is undefeated. Before you act, if this is your first exploration, he deals 1d4 minus 1 combat damage. Oh, right. Forgot about that. This is our first exploration. 1d4 minus 1. So he deals 1 combat damage to me, which will take on the Book of the Lore Master. And now he is a combat 14, which we're going to use Force Missile for. So it's going to be a d12 and 2d4 plus 1. We'll also use the Sage's Journal, which gives us another d4. Imrijka and Enora, Shardra are going to give a blessing. Actually, she should use the Baphomet because this is the first exploration, so that'll be 2 dice. So now we're looking at 4d12 plus 3d4 plus 1. 4d4. 4d12, 3d4 plus 1. So we get a total of 32 to obliterate this guy. Okay, Karsos, you're dead. That means this location is closed and we didn't have to deal with the closing effect, so yeah. That means we win. We never did any of these. When you defeat a non-villain Bane that has the undead trait on your turn, choose the weapon spell, blah blah blah. Didn't remember to do that. Wasn't planning on playing this again anyway. So yeah, this is just we don't get a reward, but that's okay. I don't want to attempt it again. It was hard enough the first time. And we still got the Sacred Prism for Enora, so that's a good pickup. So that is the end of the Traitor's Lodge. The next scenario is Vengeance at Sundered Crag. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game Wrath of the Righteous. If you did, please like the video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you know when I'm publishing videos in the future. Right now we're basically just doing the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game, and that comes out Sunday mornings, usually. So look for that on Sunday, and I will talk to you next time.